in the heart of a gentle, clock-filled village called Tick-Tock Town, where every rooftop had a tiny weather vane, and every house had a chime that rang just right. There lived a mouse no bigger than a button. His name? Hickory Dickory Mouse. Hickory wasn't like the other mice who liked to nap in biscuit boxes, or nibble on socks in warm laundry baskets. No, Hickory was endlessly curious. His little pink nose twitched at every sound, and his big round ears turned at every tick and talk. He had soft gray fur that fluffed up in the morning, bright black eyes that sparkled like polished pebbles, and he always wore a red polka dot scarf, a gift from his grandma Tilly. And where did he live? In the most magical place in all of Tick-Tock Town, inside the grandfather clock. Yes, right in the center of the town square stood a towering wooden clock, carved with swirls and stars, and beneath its mighty golden pendulum, there was a little round mouse-sized door. Hickory had lived in that clock his whole life. He knew every creaky stair and dusty nook, but there was one place he had never gone. The very top, he whispered one evening, his tail curling thoughtfully, where the golden bell sings at midnight, and the stars peek in through the clock face. He'd always watched the bell from far below, heard its deep chimes echo across the rooftops every hour. But tonight, as the town grew sleepy, and a breeze rustled the wind chimes on window ledges, Hickory felt something stir inside his chest. Adventure. He zipped up his tiny backpack, a walnut shell lined with moss, and tucked inside a wedge of cheddar, his notebook, and a shiny button compass. He looked at the mirror carved from spoon glass, and gave himself a wink. "Tonight's the night," he whispered. "I'm going to climb to the very top." Just as he reached the mouse door, a knock echoed behind him. Tock, tock. It was Benny the beetle, his best friend who lived near the chime gears. Benny was a polite little brown beetle, who wore a tiny black top hat and always carried a magnifying glass. "Out for a midnight stroll?" Benny teased, wiggling his antennae. "I'm going up," Hickory whispered, nodding toward the winding staircase that disappeared into the shadows above. "All the way to the bell." Benny's wings gave a nervous flutter. Hickory, the gears are spinning faster at night, and the pendulum swings wilder near midnight. "I know," Hickory replied with a calm smile. "But I've thought about this climb for so long, Benny. I just need to see the view. I think it'll help me feel braver." Benny looked at his friend. At the scarf, the twinkling eyes, the sturdy little boots stitched from acorn caps. He sighed. "Well, I suppose if you're going to climb, you'll need a lookout. I'll watch from below, just in case." And with that, Hickory climbed onto the first stair of the spiral staircase that wound around the inside of the clock like a cinnamon twist. The air smelled of old wood and time. The ticking was louder now. Tick-tock, tick-tock asterisk. Like a heartbeat in the dark. He took a deep breath and climbed one step, then another and another. Far above, something shimmered behind the face of the clock. He smiled. The climb had begun. Hickory's paws made soft pat-pat sounds against the winding wooden staircase as he climbed higher inside the grandfather clock. The air was cooler now, and the wooden beams creaked gently overhead like sleepy sighs. Lights from the town square below faded as he rose, and faint glimmers of moonlight peeked in from tiny arched windows in the clock's walls. The scent of dust and time tickled his whiskers. Somewhere far above, the bell gave a distant ting asterisk. A soft hum, as if it were dreaming. After what felt like 100 steps, though Hickory had counted exactly 43, the stairs curved into a wide chamber lit by a warm golden glow. "Whoa!" Hickory gasped. In the center of the room spun an enormous brass gear, polished to a soft shine. Its teeth moved slowly, turning in rhythm with the clock's heartbeat. And on its front face, shaped like a crescent moon, was a kind-eyed smile. "Ah, a visitor," said the gear in a warm, rumbly voice. "And a mouse no less. How rare and wonderful." Hickory stepped forward with a respectful bow. "Hello! My name's Hickory. I'm climbing to the top to see the bell and the stars." "Well met, Hickory. I'm Cogsworth, the turning heart of this old clock. Every tick and tock comes from me and my friends below. I must say you're quite brave to climb alone." "I've always wanted to," Hickory said softly, stepping closer. "I think there's something magical up there. Something I need to see." Cogsworth chuckled, and his gear teeth shifted with a gentle clink. "A mouse with a dream, how delightful. But the way forward isn't simple. Up ahead lies the Pendulum Woods. You'll need balance and timing to pass through." "I'm ready," Hickory said, puffing out his little chest. "I brought snacks. And I've got courage in my pocket." "That's the best kind," Cogsworth said with a wink. He turned one of his gear teeth toward the far side of the chamber, where a narrow wooden bridge led to another door. "But let me help you one step up. Climb on my arm. I'll lift you gently to the next platform." Hickory climbed carefully onto the outstretched gear tooth. As Cogsworth spun with a steady CHRR asterisk, the little mouse rose higher and higher, until he reached a wooden platform with an old hatch door. "Thank you, Cogsworth," Hickory called down, waving. "Good luck, little climber," Cogsworth called back, voice echoing through the chamber. "Remember, listen for the rhythm. Trust your step." Hickory opened the hatch and stepped into a dark tunnel of wood and swinging light. The moment the door closed behind him, Hickory felt it. Hush! A giant pendulum swung past him like a tree trunk made of gold, creaking through the space with a powerful whoosh-whoosh. Shadows flickered across the tunnel walls in gentle motion. The wooden floor trembled each time the pendulum passed. Hickory took a few careful steps forward. The hallway was narrow, the floor slightly curved like a wooden tree branch, and golden beams of moonlight peeked through cracks in the walls. He could feel the rhythm beneath his paws. Swing, pause, swing, pause. "I can do this," he whispered, remembering Cogsworth's advice. "Trust the rhythm. 1, 2. Whoosh!" He waited, watched. His nose twitched. Then, run. He dashed across the path just as the pendulum swung away. Thump! Hickory laughed with relief, his tail puffed up from the thrill. "I made it!" But as he caught his breath, he noticed something. At the end of the passage stood a small wooden arch. and beyond it a silvery blue glow shimmered like moonlight on water. He took a deep breath and stepped through. What he saw next would take his breath away. The chamber beyond was a high, circular room with glass domes and polished stone. In the middle sat a wide silver moon dial, etched with markings, stars, tiny mice tracks, and symbols Hickory didn't recognize. And sitting calmly around it were 3 mice unlike any Hickory had ever seen. They had fur that sparkled like moonlight on a puddle. Their tails curled gracefully around their feet. And atop each head sat a tiny crown of silver thread, glimmering faintly in the soft light. The eldest mouse gave a knowing nod. "We felt your steps before you arrived, little climber." The second mouse's voice was airy and light. "The pendulum carried your rhythm." And the third, the smallest and most playful-looking, giggled. "And your scarf flapped like a flag. You're very brave." Hickory bowed politely. "My name is Hickory Dickory Mouse, and I'm climbing to the top of the grandfather clock to see the golden bell." The eldest mouse placed a paw on the moon dial. "Then you are exactly where you are meant to be." "We are the whispering mice of the moon dial," she said. "Every night, we whisper the hours to the sky. We tell the stars when to twinkle and the moon when to rise." Hickory blinked. "You talk to the moon?" "Every night," the middle mouse said with a smile. "And she listens. She always listens." The smallest mouse leaped gracefully from the dial and landed beside Hickory with a soft papery sound. "But what are you listening for, Hickory? What's waiting for you at the top?" Hickory paused. He looked around the room, at the windows and the dial and the whispering light. "I think I just want to know what it feels like to see the world from up high," he said slowly. "I've always watched the bell from below. I want to see the stars from beside it. I want to feel like I've done something brave." The whispering mice all nodded. "Then you must take this," said the eldest. She reached beneath the moon dial and pulled out a tiny object that shimmered like a teardrop. A moon pebble, glowing faintly with silvery light. "This will light your way in dark places," she said, placing it in Hickory's paw, "but only when your heart remembers why it climbs." "Thank you," Hickory whispered, holding the pebble close. It was cool and smooth, and it hummed quietly in his palm. The middle mouse stepped aside and revealed a ladder carved from starlight and vine. "Climb gently, and follow the rhythm. The wind gets stronger as you go." The youngest mouse winked. "And be sure to wave when you reach the bell. We'll be watching." Hickory placed the pebble gently in his satchel and adjusted his scarf. "I will," he promised. As he began his climb, the whispering mice turned back to the moon dial. Their tiny voices returned to their task, whispering numbers and minutes into the silvery air. 8 past 12, time to dream. A blink of light for the fox cub's eyes. Hickory listened as he climbed higher, the voices fading behind him. The wooden walls narrowed. The air cooled. The wind began to hum. He was higher than he'd ever been. The ladder ended at a small round door, with a metal handle that shook slightly in the breeze. Hickory paused. He clutched the moon pebble once more and whispered to himself, "You're doing it." He opened the door, and stepped into the next passage. And the wind roared like a dragon waking up. Hoo-hoosh! The wind hit Hickory like a whooshing curtain. The moment he stepped through the round door, it wasn't cold or angry, just wild and playful, like a pack of invisible puppies racing around a field. His red polka-dot scarf flapped behind him like a flag, and he had to grip the wooden railing with both paws so he wouldn't topple backward. "Oh, my whiskers!" Hickory gasped, pressing his ears flat. He was standing on a narrow wooden bridge suspended high inside the clock tower, with only the open air and swaying gears around him. Below, the pendulum he had passed earlier looked like a tiny golden coin. Above, ropes and more ropes twisted and turned like vines in the wind. Across the bridge was another platform, this one glowing faintly with light. But to get there, he'd have to cross the wind tunnel, which was roaring and rushing like a cheerful storm. "I can do this," Hickory said aloud, though his tiny voice was nearly stolen by the wind. Just as he took one careful step onto the swaying planks, a voice floated toward him, sparkly and light. "Going somewhere, little climber?" Hickory turned around quickly, and then blinked in surprise. Hovering in the wind like a dandelion seed was a shimmering figure no bigger than an almond. She had glowy gold hair that whipped around like ribbon, delicate wind-blown clothes, and a wand in her hand. I'm Hickory," he said. "I'm climbing to the top to see the golden bell." "I'm Gusty the Breeze Fairy," she said with a cheeky grin. "And I help little ones not get blown away." She zipped around his head in a graceful loop, then hovered beside him, her wand glowing brighter. "This part of the clock gets gusty," she explained. "The wind is strongest here because of all the chime vents. Every time the clock rings, the breezes rush through like dancers late for a party." Hickory clung to the railing. "It does feel like a dance. Only, I don't know the steps." "Well, then let's teach you a few," Gusty winked. She tapped her wand against his scarf, and it glowed for a moment, stiffening just slightly, as if the fabric had remembered how to hold steady in the wind. "Your scarf will steady you," Gusty said. "Now walk with the wind. Don't fight it, let it help you." Hickory nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped carefully onto the bridge. This time, when the wind pushed, he leaned with it. When it paused, he moved. When it tugged, he danced. He wobbled a bit, but he made progress. Slow, careful steps across the wooden bridge that twisted slightly with every gust. Gusty fluttered beside him the whole time, guiding like a conductor with her wand. At one point, a gust nearly tipped him, but the enchanted scarf stiffened like a sail, catching the wind and helping him glide a step forward. "You're doing it," Gusty called. "You're riding the rhythm." Hickory laughed aloud, the sound full of joy. "I really am." At last, he reached the far side. The wind quieted into a gentle hum behind him, and the platform beneath his feet felt sturdy again. He gave Gusty a grateful bow. "Thank you," he said. "I couldn't have crossed without you." The fairy twirled in the air, pleased. "You had the wind in you all along. You just needed to hear it." She zipped upward into the breeze. leaving behind a trail of golden sparkles that faded slowly in the air. Hickory took another breath and turned to the next passage. Before him stood the entrance to the clock hand's chamber, the heart of the clock face itself, where the massive wooden minute and hour hands ticked and talked across the glass like giant tree branches telling time. He heard the great tick-tock asterisk echoing softly, slow and steady, like a lullaby. His paws tingled with nervous excitement. Next he'd ride the hands of time. The moment Hickory stepped into the clock hand's chamber, he gasped. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls were made of glass, and through them he could see the entire town of Tick-Tock below, glowing gently under moonlight. Rooftops like sugar cubes, lanterns flickering in windows, and the round cobblestone square looked no bigger than a pancake. Far beyond, the fields rippled like soft blankets, and stars sparkled above in velvet blue. But what stole Hickory's breath were the giant wooden hands of the clock. The minute hand stretched like a long polished tree limb, its edge shaped with carved markings. The hour hand was shorter and stubbier, but moved with weight and importance. Both hands slowly swept around the inner chamber, ticking forward with each passing second. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each tick made a gentle tremble beneath Hickory's feet. At the base of the chamber stood a set of carved wooden steps, leading to a narrow perch just above the center where the hands met. "That's it," Hickory whispered. "If I time it just right, I can jump onto the minute hand." He watched it swing toward him. Slow, steady. "I can do this," he said, puffing out his chest. He tucked his scarf tightly around his neck, checked that the moon pebble was secure in his satchel, and crouched low like a spring. The hand drew near, closer. "Now!" Hickory leapt, and landed with a soft thud right on the broad wooden surface of the minute hand. He stumbled, wobbled, but steadied himself, his tiny paws gripping the smooth grain. The minute hand carried him slowly across the vast arc of the clock face. He was writing time. Below him, the glass showed the world turning. A windmill spun. A cat blinked lazily on a rooftop. Somewhere, a chimney let out a cozy puff of smoke. Hickory turned his face up toward the stars and felt a rush of joy. "I'm flying," he whispered. "Flying on the tick of time." But up ahead, the hour hand was approaching. In a few seconds, the two hands would meet. And if Hickory timed it perfectly, he could jump from one to the other. He crouched again. Tick, tick. The minute hand aligned with the hour hand, and Hickory jumped again. He landed with a soft bounce, tail flying behind him, on the hour hand. It was sturdier, steadier, slower. It carried him the last stretch toward a golden ledge at the edge of the chamber. He climbed off and stood on a small golden balcony, framed with curled iron vines and old brass bells. Just ahead, nestled in a chamber of gold and wood, sat the one thing he had waited his whole life to see. The golden bell. It was massive, round, and polished so brightly. It reflected the moonlight like a mirror. Above it, long chime ropes stretched upward toward pulleys, and the bell's clapper dangled gently inside, waiting to swing. Hickory took a slow step forward. "I made it," he said aloud. I'm here. But just then, dong! The bell began to move. Midnight was coming. He stepped back, just as the ropes above twitched, and the bell began its swing. Dong! The sound echoed through the tower like a mountain yawning. The golden bell rang again, dong, and the ropes danced wildly. Hickory's scarf fluttered in the draught. One of the ropes whipped low and looped suddenly around his tail. Eep! He was lifted off his feet, dangling gently from the swinging rope, flying slowly back and forth in rhythm with the bell. Not again, he squeaked, flailing slightly. This was not part of the plan. Just then, a familiar voice called from above. Hold tight, Hickory! Benny the beetle peeked down from a platform above, gripping a rope ladder. His black top hat was tilted, and he looked both worried and impressed. I hitched a ride on the pulley wheel, Benny explained quickly. Now hang on, I've got this. He scurried down the rope with expert beetle legs, and reached Hickory, untangling his tail with tiny tugs. There, Benny said, proud. Tail freed. Mouse rescued. Hickory dropped gently onto a safe platform beside the bell, panting. Thanks, he said, still a little breathless. That was the loudest rescue I've ever had. Benny chuckled. At least you can say you rang in your adventure. The two friends sat beside the golden bell, watching it sway one last time before slowing into stillness. Above them, the moon shone bright. Around them, the clock was silent and calm again. I did it, Hickory whispered, softly now. I really did it. Hickory sat beside the golden bell, his little heart still thumping from the wild rope ride. Benny the beetle settled beside him, straightening his tiny black top hat with a sigh. The bell tower had gone quiet again, the only sounds now the gentle creaks of the settling gears, and the distant tick-tock from deep below. Moonlight poured in through an open hatch above them, washing everything in a pale, peaceful silver. The air smelled like old brass and cool night wind. Hickory leaned back on his paws, letting his tail curl around him like a blanket. It's so quiet. Benny nodded, polishing his magnifying glass with one leg. The moment after midnight always is. It's like the clock catches its breath after singing. The bell above them gave a soft shimmer, still warm from its mighty ring. Hickory stared at its golden surface, still amazed by how huge and beautiful it was. He could see his reflection in it, a little gray mouse with big ears, tousled fur, and a brave smile he hadn't known he had. I used to dream about this, he murmured. And now you've done it, Benny said with a grin. You climbed all the way up. You crossed the gears, the pendulum, the wind tunnel, and the clock hands. You even swung from a bell rope. Hickory laughed gently. When you say it like that, it sounds impossible. But you did it anyway, Benny replied, nudging him with his antenna. And I'm proud of you. Hickory smiled, then looked around the chamber again. Golden beams curved in beautiful arches above, and bits of stardust sparkled in the breeze drifting through the windows. A ladder stretched upward through the final hatch near the roof, leading, perhaps, to the very highest platform of all. A quiet breeze rustled through the bell tower again, and Hickory's moon pebble glowed softly in his satchel, as if whispering, "You're not quite done yet." He stood up. "I want to see the stars," he said, "from the very, very top." Benny looked up, tilting his tiny head. "Do you think it's safe?" "Nope," Hickory said with a brave little grin. "But I think I'm ready." They climbed the narrow rope ladder together, each rung gently swaying beneath their tiny feet. At the top was a hatch, old, brass, and covered in dust. Hickory pushed it open, and a wave of cool night air kissed his face. They emerged onto a tiny golden balcony, barely wider than a teacup saucer. And the view. It was everything. Below them stretched the whole of Tick-Tock Town. Not just the rooftops, but the hills. The faraway glimmer of a river. The sleepy lights of farms and cottages. And the whispering fields that rolled like waves under the moon. It all felt soft and still, as though the world had curled up for bed. Above them, stars shone like freckles on the sky. The moon hovered huge and kind, glowing like a nightlight in the heavens. Hickory leaned forward on the railing, resting his chin on his paws. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." Benny said nothing at first. He just sat beside his friend, gazing up with wide beetle eyes. Then softly, he whispered, "This is the kind of view you only get when you climb." The breeze brushed past them again, gentle this time. Hickory thought of Cogsworth's spinning gear smile, of the whispering mice whispering to the stars, of Gusty the fairy guiding him across the bridge, of every moment he thought he couldn't do it, and then did it anyway. "I thought I came here to see the top of the clock," Hickory said. "And you did," Benny replied. "But I think," Hickory paused, "I think I really came to see me star. The me that could make it this far." Benny smiled and gave a tiny nod. "You're more than a curious mouse. You're a brave one, too." They sat together for a long time, watching the stars dance. Eventually, the wind gave them a small nudge. It was time to go home. The stars shimmered above like tiny paper lanterns, and the moon seemed to smile down at the two friends, sitting side by side on the golden balcony, at the very top of the grandfather clock. Hickory breathed in the cool night air, letting it fill his chest. "I wish I could stay up here forever." Benny the beetle chuckled gently. "We could build a hammock between the bell ropes. Call it the highest nap spot in Tick-Tock Town." Hickory grinned, but he knew their adventure was nearly done. The wind was quiet now, the clock had finished its midnight song, and soon the world would begin to wake. "It's time to go home," he said softly. "Agreed," Benny nodded. "But how do we get back down? Climbing all those stairs again might take till breakfast asterisk." Hickory scratched his chin, thinking. Just then, something caught his eye. A faint sparkle at the edge of the platform. He stepped closer. Trailing down the outside of the clock tower, gently glowing in the moonlight, was a magical silver ribbon slide, twirling and twisting around the tower like a vine made of stars. At the top of it sat a folded note pinned to the railing. Hickory picked it up and read aloud. To the little mouse who dared to climb. Here's your way down, fast and fine. May the stars guide your every spin. With love, the whispering mice. Benny gasped. It's a starry slide. Hickory's eyes sparkled. The whispering mice must have left it for us. The ribbon glowed brighter now, invitingly. Hickory looked at Benny and held out a paw. Ready? Benny adjusted his top hat and took it. Let's ride the sky. Together, they sat at the top of the magical slide. Hickory in front, Benny holding on tight. And with one brave push, they launched into the air. Hoo-hoosh! The slide carried them down in loops and swirls, spiraling gently around the outside of the grandfather clock. Stars shimmered alongside them, tiny sparkles dancing through the sky. They passed the glass windows of the clock hand's chamber, where the minute hand gave a proud tick. They zipped by the wind tunnel bridge, which hummed a quiet breeze of applause. They whooshed through the moon dial chamber, where the whispering mice looked up and waved with sparkling paws. Go, brave mouse, called the youngest, giggling. They even looped past Cogsworth's gear room, where the big brass gear turned slowly and smiled. Ride the rhythm, he boomed with joy. Swish, swish, loop-de-loop. The ride was gentle and gleeful, like sliding down a ribbon of dreams. Hickory laughed the whole way, ears flapping, scarf trailing behind him like a comet tail. Benny shouted, "Best exit ever!" Finally, with one last curl, they landed softly in the grass of the town square, plop, right at the base of the grandfather clock. The air smelled like dew and dandelions. A rooster far in the distance gave a sleepy cockadoo asterisk, but hadn't quite finished the doodle-doo. The village was still fast asleep. Hickory rolled onto his back, looking up at the enormous clock tower. We really did it, he whispered. Benny lay beside him, wings spread, every tick in talk. They stayed there for a moment, breathing in the quiet before morning. Hickory's moon pebble glowed one last time in his satchel, just a faint silver pulse, then faded into gentle stillness. The pebble had done its job. The scarf had fluttered, the gears had turned, the bells had rung. And now it was time to dream. The stars were beginning to fade, as morning crept across the edge of Tick-Tock Town. Pale pink light stretched across the sky, brushing the rooftops like the soft touch of a waking dream. Hickory and Benny stood up slowly on the dewy grass, stretching their arms and wings with sleepy yawns. I never thought the grass would feel so good after all that climbing, Hickory murmured, pressing his paws into the cool earth. Benny chuckled. I never thought I'd ride a starry ribbon slide, or see the moon blink at us, or dangle from a bell rope. They both laughed quietly, careful not to wake the still snoozing town. The grandfather clock loomed tall above them, now quiet again, its mighty bell still, its windows dark. But something felt different. The old wooden tower now seemed like a friend. Not just a clock, but a place that held magic and music, stars and secrets. Home, Hickory whispered. Together, they tiptoed back through the little mouse door at the base of the clock. Inside, everything was calm. The gears ticked softly below. The walls smelled of wood shavings and thyme. Hickory's room was just the same. Small and warm, carved into the base like a hidden acorn. A tiny table with a teacup. A patchwork quilt on a walnut shell bed. And on the wall, a hand-drawn map of his dream climb, now complete. He took off his red polka-dot scarf and hung it gently on its hook. The moon pebble he placed on the bedside shelf, where it gave off one last soft glow, then dimmed like a candle's kiss goodnight. Benny had his own matchbox bed nearby, nestled inside a drawer lined with soft cotton. He took off his top hat and placed it on a bottle cap stand, then curled up beneath his thimble-sized blanket. "Good night, Hickory," he mumbled, already drifting off. Hickory climbed into bed, pulling the patchwork quilt up to his chin. He looked at the ceiling of his cozy room, where the wooden beams arched gently like tree limbs. Faint ticking sounds echoed from the clock's belly, soothing and steady. Tick-tock, tick-tock. He smiled. In his heart, he could still feel the wind in his ears, the swing of the pendulum, the shimmer of stardust. He saw the whispering mice waving, Cogsworth's gleaming teeth turning, gusty golden sparkles. The view from the top. He thought of how scared he'd been at the start, and how proud he was now. "I really did it," he whispered into the quiet. The clock ticked back, as if answering. "You did." Outside, the first birds began to chirp. But inside the grandfather clock, under a soft patchwork quilt, a very tiny, very brave little mouse was already dreaming. Of wind tunnels that sang, of clock hands that flew, and of bells that chimed for adventure. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would bring a new dream, one worth climbing for. That's the end of our story. Thanks for listening with Blankie Berries. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed it. Good night, little dreamer.